welcome to the channel. If you haven't been here before, my name's Carl. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you consider subscribing so we can help the channel grow. Right then, as you know, the Panzer II's finished and it's up on the shelf, and what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at the Airfix Chipmunk T10 in 1/48 scale. So what we're going to do is we're going to crack on with the first part of the build. Right, what we're going to do is we do normally with aircraft is we're going to start off with a cockpit. So I'm just removing the bits and pieces from the sprue. Eagle-eyed of you will notice that I'm removing these nice like textured cushions that are not entirely accurate with the scheme that I want, but I just like the texture on them, so I thought I'd use them anyway. So the cockpit tug comes out, the seat assemblies come out, and then I've already got most of the other bits and pieces. So all I'm doing now is I'm cleaning up where the sprue gates are, because what I like to do at the moment, I've learned from watching YouTube channels, is take quite a big piece of the sprue with you when you cut the piece, if you can, off the sprue, because it releases a lot of the tension, and then what you can go in and then cut off any extra bits from the sprue gate closer to the part that you're going to do, and without leaving any marks on the actual piece that you're going to be working on. So I found that's working quite effectively. What I'm doing now is just dry fitting the pilot seat, or the front pilot seat, just make sure it fits okay. There are some small gaps. I don't know if they're going to be noticeable once everything's done, and we'll figure out later on whether we're going to fill it or not. But it just, I'm just cleaning up now. A little bit of I think it's a 400 bit of sanding stick just to clean up any of this sprue gate that's left over. So just take your time over this and make sure that it's all nicely cleaned up. One thing I'd advise while you're doing your cleanup is constantly dry fitting, just testing that it fits and you're not creating any problems. And the other thing is you can see where there's any issues if you keep dry fitting like this. Before you get to any sort of glue, you're going to keep checking to make sure that it fits correctly, because you'll identify any problems with dry fitting. So what I'm doing obviously now is I'm just adding a bit of Tamiya extra thin around there just to put the seat in position, and it goes in quite easily. There's a few little gaps that I think we can see there, but you know, squeezing it together with a bit of Tamiya thing ought to fill it. Now I'm putting these little seat cushions in. Obviously I've got them mixed up, and there is a way of doing it, so I have to look at the instructions to make sure I've got them the right way around. The left and the right. It's just the identifies the way the little the lap belt goes. You can see when you put it on which way it goes round. So once I've identified it, I just drop it in, add a bit of Tammy-Rich thin, just push it down with a pair of tweezers, and now we're good to go. It's all fairly simple. So far I haven't come across a problem yet. Quite enjoying it so far. Right, now what you've got to do is you've got 4 holes in the bottom of the cockpit tub where the pilot's feet go, and you've got to drill 4 holes out that are 1 millimetre at 1 millimetre they are. So I'm just doing it by hand, just gently doing it, and then what I do is I clean these up with my little craft knife, and also once I've got like as much as I can to get rid of any rough edges, I just remove them. Any other excess with a little bit Tammy-Rich thin. That's another thing I spotted a few times when I've been watching sort of tutorials on YouTube, and it works quite effectively. It gets rid of any of the rough edges and the dust, so just don't go mad with it. Just enough to melt it around and clean the little holes up. Right, now what we're going to do now is I'm putting in the control sticks, and this was a mistake. I mean, it's not a drastic mistake, but it just made life a little bit more difficult for me later on. I did it in like the wrong order. I should have put the compasses in before I put the control sticks in, because it made putting the compasses in afterwards a little bit more difficult. So I was just like making extra like work for myself. But these only go in one way. You'll see at the bottom of the control stick there's a little knob that fits into a slot, and there is an orientation that it needs to go around. They do tilt slightly forward, and I believe they're meant to. But once you get it in, just make sure that it is like vertical as well. You know, make sure it is 90 degrees up and down, because they can like move left or right if you don't like keep an eye on them. So just make sure that they're actually vertical. They went in easy enough. So now what we're going to do is we're looking at the 4 holes. The 4 holes are for the compasses, and make sure that there's a pointy end. So you've got like a rounded back and a point towards the front, and the point goes towards the control stick. So just make sure you get that the right way around. And these were a little bit difficult. I made it, like I said, when I put the control sticks in myself, first, I just made life a little bit more difficult for myself. So I cleaned it up, and it was just a bit of a challenge to get it in with the control stick in the way. So what I ended up doing was getting a cocktail stick and just sticking a little blue tack on the end of the cocktail stick, and use that to help me position the compasses, and they went in easy after that. So there you go, a little bit of glue tack on a cocktail stick, and it drops straight in. Just makes life a lot easier. But you shouldn't have to do this if you do it the right way around and not like be a noob like me. For some reason, one's got a hole and one hasn't. So, and I think that's just moulding issue. I don't think it's actually there because it's meant to be there. But you'll see the one that I'm putting in now has got like a hole in the top. Right, a little bit of blue tack, and just pop straight in. And you see the hole at the top of the compass? I don't believe that's meant to be there. Or the other one's meant to have one, I'm not sure. But just like prod them into place with a pair of tweezers, just make sure they're bedded down correctly, make sure the control sticks are still vertical as they're meant to be, and that's that bit done. Now what I'm doing is I'm just dry fitting the seats. I don't really want to put the seats in just yet because I want to paint them first to give me better access to the actual floor panel, because I want to do a bit of weathering on the bottom of the floor panel before I glue the seat in. But I'm just checking sure that they're just fitting properly, and there doesn't seem to be much of an issue. Right, what we're going to do now is we're going to drill 2 holes at the rear of the aircraft, and these are for the sort of like anti-spin strakes. They're not sort of anti-spin, but what they do is they make it spin more predictable for when you're teaching how to get out of spins. In the documentation it says you should do this at a millimetre, But watching Gary's stuff, Gary recommended that we drill it at 0.8 millimeter. It was a better fit then. So what I'm doing is I'm drilling it at 0.8, and we'll see how it fits later on. So right now what we're going to do is going to move on and get a bit of primer on this plane, and I'm just using the Vallejo black primer. Again, I was getting issues because of the tip dry, and that's got nothing to do with the airbrush. It's all to do with the climate in this country. It's terrible for airbrushing, and you get to a point where you thin it enough so that it sort of flows smooth, but then it's just so thin that you tend to get splatters, even if you reduce the pressure on the compressor right down as far as you can. And then I use a Mac valve as well, and I'll still get issues. You get to a point where it's like you're not getting any value out of the paint at all. It's just new enough main thinners coming out. I mean, I get it on eventually. I just got to deal with the tip dry. So it went on okay eventually, but it was a little bit of a struggle. And I always find it more with the primer than I do any of the other Vallejo products. Right, what we're going to do now is I'm going to move on to a little bit of black basing. So I'm using white for this. I'm just going through the centre of the panels, and I'm also going along the sort of the frame and adding a little bit of highlight, as it were. There won't be too much on these chipmunks because they're really well maintained. Okay, what we're doing now is going to move on to the blending coat, and this area here was the front panel, front top panel of the Chipmunk, and also I was going to do the same with the engine compartment bulkhead, which is also a firewall, but I want to get this sort of green down first. The reason I wanted to get these two pieces done as well is because when it comes to sort of completing the cockpit and putting the fuselage together, these are parts that are required anyway, so I just thought I'd get the green out of the way first. Once that was done, then I just carried on and I started with the rest of it. But you see that, I mean, the black base is working all right there. I've still got a little bit of modulation in there. I'm quite pleased with that. Right, so now we move on to the black, which is the inside of the cockpit. This went down sort of like way better than the primer. So yeah, there's got to be something to do with the paint there. Mind you, I did have this thin down to sort of 30% paint and 70% thinner, so that could be another reason. But it's still the paint. I had the same with the primer, so I can't really understand it, but it must be that. So perhaps I need to thin the primer a bit more over here. But it all seems to go down quite nicely. I didn't go too mad. I didn't want too much showing through. Just a tiny bit of modulation to show that the aircraft had been sort of like used in a sort of training environment. Right, now what we're going to do is going to move on to Decaling. As you can see, I've already given the cockpit and, well, you'll see later on, the engine bay bulkhead and everything a good coat, a good gloss coat. I used Allclad Aqua Gloss, and it seems to do a decent job this time. You can't really grumble at Cartograph decals. They go down really nice, easy. I'm using microset to put them down, and then over the instrument panels I used a bit of microsol to bed them down into the gauges, but you know, as you can see, they went down really easy. Right, what I've done is I've moved on to an oil wash. I've used burnt umber and a bit of black to create the wash, and I'm laying it down quite heavy at the moment. I use a dry brush and then, you know, cleaned off just to remove anything that's pulled, but I did leave some of the stuff around, so, you know, because there is, adding a bit of filter, add a little bit of dirt in the engine compartment. I thought it actually came out quite well. I didn't bother using any of this in the cockpit because I wanted to keep the cockpit fairly clean, as it's not an operational aircraft, it's a training aircraft. Right, now we're moving on to a bit of dry brushing. I used Air aluminium, really dried off on a little old sort of makeup-y type brush, and just went around the edges, anything that sort of is going to get a little bit of wear. Even on a training aircraft like this, you know, you'll find a little bit of wear because they use quite a lot, so you'll find little things get rubbed and you get a little bit of wear on there. It just don't get really dirty, but you do get wear and tear through normal usage. Now we're going to move on to the construction of the cockpit and the fuselage halves. The front seat goes in first. That one goes in okay, but there's still room for wiggle there, which causes me an issue later on. You think it's in properly because of the two lugs there, you just add a little extra thin in there just to seat it correctly, but it's still not 100% right. And this rear seat was a real issue. They'd have been better off putting like a couple of pins there, so you know you're firmly located. These little tabs and the recesses on the front of the seat are like, they're hideous. There's so much movement available, so it's a really vague fit, and it is a problem. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually dry fitting it into the side of the cockpit, just so that I can get everything lined up, because that rear seat has been a real pain. As soon as I know I've got it sort of lined up where I want it, I just add a couple of drops of extra thin in there just to hold the cockpit in place while I just adjust very slightly the rest of it. Now we come on to the next issue. Is I got the fuselage halves together, the rear goes together beautifully, it just without a problem at all. The front is, there's a lot of warpage on the fuselage. If you press the front, yeah, the back springs. If you press the rear, the front sort of springs. It takes a little bit of jiggery to get it to fit correctly. So basically I secured the front end first. Now I'm happy that it'll go together okay. I just glued that side in to make sure, so the cockpit's now on the port side secured. Now we're going on to the flaps levers. Again, these are really vague. I mean, it's such a pain to get it to sit correctly. Like I think there's a single bar actually, I think, that goes all the way through that connects the two levers. So it don't matter who's like pulling the lever, the pilot or the instructor. And I think the actual bar goes through the front seat, and it's all one piece. But the way it all goes together is really, really vague, and it does become, it is an issue. They could have done a better job of engineering that. Right, now I'm happy with how the fit of the tub is inside the fuselage. I'm just gonna get that front end glued so that I know it's good. Then I can work my way aft as soon as it's sorted out. But as you can see, there's still an issue at the front, and I did check everything. There's nothing impinging on it. It's just, I don't know what it is. There's something there that's been a bit of a pain. It does close up, but it is a bit of an issue at first. So you have to quickly add a little bit of Tamiya extra thin as you start moving aft. Check the front again, move aft a bit more, add a bit more Tamiya extra thin. The back half of the fuselage goes together beautifully. There's not an issue at all. As you can see, there's just, there's no gap. It's so easy. I wish the front had been like that. So there's something that's not quite right fit-wise there, and I've checked. There's nothing in the way. There's nothing I need to file or adjust or sand. There's no like screw gates or anything in the way. And what I'm doing now is going against the instructions. I'm going what the advice from Gary's stuff. He says put this piece on the top half of the fuselage on first, in front of the engine bay, just so you got that everything lined up correctly, and then put the bulkhead in, because you can always jiggle about with the bulkhead once you've got everything lined up correctly. So I took his advice, and that's the way I went with that. Now we've got the bulkhead in there. As you can see, I painted it and did a bit of weathering on it. It looks really nice as well. That pops in quite alright. It just needed a little bit of jiggery pokery, like get it to seat correctly, but there wasn't nothing that to do sanding wise or filing wise or scraping wise. I just had to make sure I seated it correctly before I added some Tamiya extra thin, just a little bit around the edges, and just pressed it down so it went in nicely. I am actually pretty pleased with that bulkhead. It looks really nice. So now I'm just adjusting the top again, making sure that's closed up correctly. Now I've got that bulkhead in place. And the easiest way I found was, right, get it lined up, stick a clamp on it, and then just push the bulkhead back in again. And it all seated nicely. Right, that's the cockpit built and inserted into the two halves of the fuselage, and I've also put the engine bulkhead in the front just to combine everything together. I'm pleased with how it looks. It did take quite a bit of jiggery pokery to get it in there. The thing that I'm really not all that happy about is how vague the fit is on some of the stuff, and it does make things difficult. So I'd advise taking your time and doing a lot of dry fitting with this, even just up to this point. Right, I hope you enjoyed the build so far, and if you've got any advice, leave me in the comments please. And also, it'd be great if you could give the video a like to help the algorithm. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel to help it grow, and I'll see you guys later.